So age of the main character, if you're writing fiction, is often the determinant of what format your work will most likely fit. Now, it's not a guarantee, obviously, because you have to look at the other factors that I mentioned earlier about what distinguishes the formats from each other, right? But for a picture book, for example, if you have a 6-year-old, that would be completely appropriate for a picture book audience. If you have a 5-year-old, yeah. Now, if you have a 3-year-old, now it could, yes, also 2-year-olds also audience for picture books, but if depending again on the content, it might be something that might be more appropriate for a board book. Again, these are not hard and fast rules, but generally I often look at the perceived age of the main character or characters to figure out what format we're likely playing in. Whenever I look at other people's work, whenever I look at my work, I start thinking about what the age of the main character should be or what I'm imagining in my head, right? If your character does not have an age, that's why I say perceived age. You might have an animal. If you have an animal, but most people say, well, if you have an animal, you have a picture book. Not necessarily so. You could have an animal starring in a middle grade novel. But what is that perceived age of that animal? How would kids identify them? That would ultimately help you determine, along with, again, those other factors. One tip, when you're conceiving a YA novel or a middle grade novel, age really can make a huge difference on one or the other. If you have a 17-year-old in your teen novel, it's kind of unlikely it's a middle grade unless the content fits the middle grade, has the kind of complexity that a middle grade does versus a YA, but more than likely that most people will view your work as being a teen novel. Now, if you have somebody on the cusp, like a 14-year-old, that could be a teen novel and it could also be a middle grade novel. It just really depends, again, on the context, the complexity, what's being addressed. And then if you have a 12-year-old, most people would say a 12-year-old is squarely a middle grade novel. And because kids in general don't read down, meaning they don't read below their ages, they tend to like to read above their ages. So when you're hitting a 12-year-old as a main character, yours will probably fit into a middle grade novel, and that's the happy sweet spot. If you have a 10-year-old, chances are you probably have a chapter book or a middle grade novel. Again, it really just depends on everything else I'm about to talk about, but this gives you an idea of things, okay? Just know, no hard and fast rules, but do place a conscious effort about the age of the main character. And when in doubt, think about what your book idea is most similar to, or your manuscript of some existing product that might be out there, and check out the ages of those main characters. I always say the answers are on the shelves. When in doubt, go look at the shelves or go look on Amazon, the virtual shelf, and you should be able to find enough information to give you some validation on whether or not your hypothesis is correct based on what you see. Now, one quick side note, when you do research, I always recommend that you research more recently published novels, because it takes, or not novels, but books in general, usually within the last 2 years of publication. When I speak during all these workshop sessions, I am talking mainly of major trade publishers, which is who I write for. So there's differences when you write for, there can be differences when you write for other publishers, but major trade like Simon & Schuster, Penguin Random, that's what I'm usually referring to. So I would study most recently published books by these major trade publishers to give you an indication of answers, because what was fashionable in the 80s is probably not fashionable anymore. So you want to stay current. Now, the only exception I would say is if you're writing a classic novel or you're trying to write in a classic style. And then I mean like true, like classic, everybody knows of it, and you're trying to evoke a certain kind of feeling. Even then, I would look for more current novels that have that classic feeling to it, and I would also study classics as well to help you understand what those answers could be. Okay.